So Bruce Orr was a senior official at the Justice Department.
Right.
He knows Glenn Simpson. He knows Christopher Steele.
Mm-hmm.
His wife, Nellie Orr, has also been hired by Fusion GPS that was running the Clinton spy ring for her during the campaign, targeting Trump. We know that through our other document request, our FOIA request, that Christopher Steele, this foreign spy you talked about, had been paid by the FBI. 11 of the 13 times he met with him in 2016. Then they fired him because he was a leaker. So they start talking, using Orr as a vehicle for getting, as you point out, laundering this information into the FBI and Justice Department. And these communications with Orr and this desperation to get Steele's info is beginning not before the campaign, but after the president's elected.
Yep.
So these are FBI 302 reports all about targeting the president.
Mm-hmm.
And the first report we uncover details Steele's bias against President Trump. I don't have the wording in front of me, I don't know if you do, but he was desperate and passionate about keeping the president out of office.
Right.
But that was no pause. That gave them no pause in using his material, did they?
No.
The other thing I thought was interesting in the reports, and I know we've just talked about the State Department connections here, is that it details that the FBI and DOJ weren't the only recipients of this information. It looks to me like they were flooding the zone. Where can we get this information targeting Trump, and how do we maximize it? Well, let's go to the DOJ, FBI, and where else did they go?
Right, State Department. One of the things these 302s really emphasize too, in my mind, is the centrality, and I don't think this is fully appreciated yet, but the centrality of Bruce Orr, who was the Associate Deputy Attorney General. I want to get his title right. He was dual-hatted, though, which is very unusual. He held two very senior positions. He was also the head of the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, as well as being the Associate Deputy Attorney General. Two big jobs. Now, why on earth? I've always wondered, why on earth would you give an individual like that two top positions? It's tough to do one of those jobs properly, but to do two of them. And what I think these records show more than anything is that he was central. He was feeding, remember, this information. He introduced a top State Department official to Chris Steele in October 2016, Kathleen Kavalek. She was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Eurasian Affairs, European Affairs.
Who reported to Victoria Nuland, who was the top official.
Exactly. And you'll recall from other records we got, that Kathleen Kavalek said that she found some of his information that he was supplying, Christopher Steele was providing to her, inaccurate.
Yeah, but it didn't stop her.
No, she forwarded, I will say, she forwarded her report on to the FBI saying that he was providing information that was inaccurate. Specifically, in one instance in particular, Steele claimed that the Russian government was running an operation, an intelligence operation, to influence the 2016 election out of the Russian consulate in Miami. She said there is no Russian consulate in Miami. So right there, she shot down this guy's credibility. And yet, 8 days later, the FBI submits a FISA warrant application to the FISA court attesting to the accuracy of all this information that's in this Steele dossier, including that. So, this is so Bruce Orr was feeding information, to various conduits. He was central to this operation.
And he's being interviewed repeatedly by the FBI to get information from a source or sources that were compromised, according to the FBI, because they were cut off. And he was also they knew, the FBI, because he told them, my wife is working for Fusion GPS, and she's got dirt on Trump. Do you want it? And then what happened? They transfer the information.
He gives them a thumb and drive with all of Nellie Orr's research. A little background on Nellie, and I would commend to everyone an excellent article that our friend Diana West wrote in February 2018 at the American Spectator called Nellie Orr, Woman in the Middle. And Diana does meticulous research into people's backgrounds. She's read Nellie's books, her reviews of other academics. Nellie, just a little background. Nellie was a Russian linguist, fluent in Russian. She had an undergraduate degree from Harvard. She had a PhD in Russian history from Stanford, as I recall, which she received in 1990. She studied in the Soviet Union during the Cold War in the Soviet Union, 1989. The only way that Nellie Ohr would have been allowed to have done that is if the Soviet Union, the Soviet government, approved of her research. In other words, that it was favorable to the Soviet Union. As Diana,
she was seen as reliable.
Yes, as Diana points out in this article, she was in the revisionist school. Nellie Ohr was in the revisionist school of American academics on Russian history. Her job was to whitewash the atrocities of the Soviet Union. And she is a Stalin apologist in her writings. She called Stalin's murder of over 6 million people and the collectivization of the farms in the Soviet Union excesses. Okay, this is so basically you make an omelet, and I'm paraphrasing.
So like a lot of leftist intellectual Sovietologists, she was an apologist for the communists.
Yes, and that was deliberate. That was a deliberate effort to counter the Whittaker Chambers of the world, who were the people that were calling out the real atrocities of the Soviet Union. Of course, Whittaker Chambers preceded her by a number of years, but the anti-communism movement of the 1970s and 80s.
And the historic, the beginnings of the real history coming out.
Right.
They needed a counter. So Nellie Ohr is getting this. She's working for Fusion GPS. Ohr tells them she knows she was working for Clinton. Here's a thumb drive of all of her material from Fusion GPS. But what was well, first of all, the whole situation's wildly irregular. But then they're conveying information that's modified to eliminate Fusion GPS from the headers of Nellie's work. Why would they hide? Why would they want to hide it?
That baffles.
Is there any good reason?
That baffles me because they give Bruce Ohr turns over to the FBI Nellie's reports on a thumb drive, but with the Fusion GPS headers stripped out of the reports. Now you're right. Why would they do that? It wasn't like the FBI didn't know they were getting the reports from Fusion GPS. That this was work product of Nellie Ohr, who was working for Fusion GPS. Just as a practical matter, I'm not really clear on
Well, it
how
was a sorry cover-up, is what it is. I mean, how else do you conclude it? Why would you?
Right. I mean, maybe I'm assuming too much intelligence on the part of the FBI.
It wasn't like they weren't getting anything, so they were obviously taking improper steps and dealing with Ohr. I mean, Ohr is a senior Justice Department official, and he's playing spy games with Christopher Steele. Talk about that.
Right. Well, he's meeting with Steele. He's talking, as you mentioned earlier. Bruce Ohr essentially becomes a confidential human source of the FBI after the FBI has terminated Chris Steele in, I think, October 2016, because Christopher Steele was going around blabbing to all the media that he could, Mother Jones and
which the FBI documents confirmed that Fusion GPS was pushing this material out to the media.
Exactly, before the election. So this was an attempt to derail the election. That is, Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele were giving all this bogus information, about supposed Russia-Trump collusion to the media before the election, and then that effort falls flat and it fails. And the FBI says, "Oh, well, we can't have our source, Christopher Steele, out talking to the media. That makes him unreliable, so we have to terminate him by FBI regulations." But then they essentially rehire him through their conduit, Bruce Ohr.
But talk about the communications, though. Talk about how he was communicating with Bruce Ohr, with Christopher Steele.
Well, they were having meetings. They were talking on WhatsApp.
Ohr admits he's using this non-governmental application to communicate with a government source about the President of the United States supposedly being a traitor. How is any of that proper?
I don't think it is, and this isn't actually an issue that
because we don't get WhatsApp.
Right.
FOIA isn't covering. This raises questions. We got to FOIA all the WhatsApp materials that he's referencing,
and that's been a very interesting topic of discussion internally here at Judicial Watch.